Hello and welcome, my name is Jeremy Siliberto and my ongoing art series is Catacomb Culture. Through Catacomb Culture I make hyper-realistic human bone art out of a mold making and casting process. And I make them as hyper-realistic as possible. And these sculptures are great for decor purposes. I even include lights into some of them. For example, from night lights to chandeliers and everything in between. From big catacomb walls to simply a single skull wall mount. Even wearable art and custom pieces for your personal or business use. And we always make surrealist visions a reality on set of photo and video shoots, as you'll soon see. And don't forget the food-safe skull bowls, the chalices, goblets, and mugs. So in this video, we'll be covering some behind-the-scenes looks of Catacomb Culture, two of my new dark art house films, and then also highlighting some of my bone sculptures. And you could rewatch my whole video on my website at catacombculture.com, and you could reach out to me directly with any kind of ideas, customizations, or inspiration questions at jeremy@catacombs.us, and I hope you enjoy my video. In this video, I'll be taking us through the clay to casting process. As we see here, I'm working with the clay. I like to use a very hard, dense clay, and it usually takes me about anywhere from several weeks to several months, depending on the piece, because I like to spend time with it and then take a couple weeks off to kind of reset my eyes to see where the good parts and the bad parts are, what I need to fix. Now I'm diving into the silicone rubber mold making process. I apply a thin layer to the sculpture itself and then glue it in position. For all intents and purposes, we can refer to this as a type of box mold that I'm making, where I put the sculpture inside a mixing container and then pour in the silicone rubber. Now I'm removing it from the mixing pot and going into the most important part of the mold making process is removing the sculpture. These X-Acto knife cuts I'm making right now are the most important choices I'll be making in this entire process. These cut choices are super important because it'll affect every single casting I make with this mold. And you can find the finished knobs on my website at catacombculture.com. And we see here I removed the clay sculpture from the mold successfully. It doesn't look too beat up, not bad. Now I'm just kind of using the wiring as a stabilizer to make sure it doesn't open, prevent any kind of leaks. I'm mixing up the resin, pouring it in, and then just some additional molds for any extra resin I have while making this batch. Then I let the resin cure for about 20 minutes till it stabilizes, and then I go in and remove the resin castings. And then just a comparison of the clay with the casting. And the end result is a stationary skull knob. Yeah, and these are great to be used as, say, like a drawer pull, or even like a coat hanger or jewelry hanger. As we see here, I'm hanging some Catacomb Culture bolo ties from it. And yes, I also make a twistable doorknob version of this as well. It's my skull doorknobs. I'm in love. I want to put them on every door in the house. Tag a friend in the comments that you can see having these on their doors. I am beyond excited to get back on the road and start doing expos, markets, trade shows. I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with vendor friends in other cities, as well as meeting social media friends at the table so that I can show the details of the art that social media photos just can't pin down. Now, as we see in this time lapse, I'm setting up for an expo. Now typically at a market, I only bring with me pre-made sculptures. But with this virtual market, I have pre-made and pre-sale items available. And on my website, catacombculture.com, I've listed which items are pre-sale and which items are ready to ship. And because I make all my sculptures from raw material, I can easily customize your order. Just shoot me an email and let me know what you're thinking. Now, if you've ever been to my table or my booth before, you'll know that I have a ton of candles. I custom scent and custom color every single candle. And because they're custom scented, I get to do all kinds of different scents. Personally, my favorite one is the bonfire scent. It smells just like the smoke of a long night's bonfire. I love it. But I also do all kinds of fruit scents, dessert scents, earthy scents, as well as aromatics and essential oil scents. And I even miss doing some last minute sculpting on the beach out of the van. And then Oddities Flea Market in Chicago, some quick shots of my table. Got the food safe skull bowl here, surrounded by candles, pins, magnets. Now, also as I travel for expos and markets, I do a travel vlog that I refer to as Odd Ventures. You can find the episodes and come live vicariously with me at www.oddventures.net. These adventures have taken me to some very, very interesting places. Feels like it's taken me to the ends of the earth. Made me meet Sasquatch, some aliens, and even independent museums that artists made for themselves. I've literally died and gone to heaven here at the Dark Crystal exhibit. Fun fact, I am a huge Jim Henson fan, specifically The Dark Crystal. It's my favorite movie. And then I want to be a catacomb culture adventure without photo shoots. It's like a cannonball. Oh. You can follow my photo library on Instagram where I'm at Catacomb Culture. And again, we could live vicariously through these Catacomb Culture adventure vlogs, and you could find them at www.oddventures.net. And let me know in the comments some odd adventures that you've had. Disregard the human limbs in the background. I want to show you how I make a human skull nightlight. I bind the molds, mix up the resin, and pour it in. I let it set, and then I remove the castings. I then take them to my hardware studio. This is where I remove the pour spouts, I remove any imperfections, and add some unique details to each piece. I continue by carefully adding the electrical hardware to the back end of them. I paint each piece, and then I go in and carefully add some tooth detail. I usually do a Catacomb Culture signature on each piece. And then these flicker bulbs are my favorite. In my opinion, they are quite essential for these nightlights, without a doubt. And then I test the nightlights in various situations. You could find yours at catacombculture.com. Next is my experimental dark art house film titled Bellow Song of Flesh and Bone. After the film, I have a explanatory video, and you can rewatch this video at catacombculture.com. short film titled Bellow Song of Flesh and Bone. That's more about the artist's journey. In a sense, some experiences that I've had along my artist journey. For example, walking into the darkness that is making art, with just one candle being one idea. Then over time, creating enough light, enough candles, ideas, keeping the artist alive. And in contrast, the skulls in the cave represent many of the living artists whose dreams died and the candles have burnt out. Now, as the actress begins to play the cello, it begins to tell the story of the song. The two skull candles, the two characters, the angel, the devil, represent a duality artist's face. That being, do we see the tree as the demon, or do we see the forest as the angel? In the story, the demon becomes distracted by a buried treasure. As an artist, there's infinite distractions to misguide us from our goals and achievements. In this story, the angel and the demon are merged to create a needed mindset of omnivision. What I mean by this is seeing the path far in the distance while also seeing the obstacles that are laid right in front of us.
You can find these masks and more, or even customize your own, at catacombculture.com/masks.
I'm working on a Skull Bowl collaboration piece with my friends at Noir Dark Spirits. It's a restaurant and bar located in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Typically my Skull Bowls can hold over 24 fluid ounces, but the parameter set with this project is 12 ounces. I'll also be including our collaboration names engraved on the back side, this being Noir Dark Spirits and Catacomb Culture. This is a great example of a business collaboration piece. Once I'm done with this piece at my hardware studio, I take it back to get prepped for silicone rubber mold making. Off camera, I applied a smooth inner liner of clay, as well as applied a brush-on silicone rubber mold making technique. Now again, like a previous video, this is the most important part of the entire process, because these cuts will live forever in this mold. I need to make just the right cuts in just the right places. And finally, I removed the sculpture from the mold. And I really couldn't wait too long in anticipation of trying this mold. And just like before, I use a 2-part resin. Now the moment we've been waiting for. Alright, first casting done. Beautiful. 12-ounce BB. Alright, let's see it. Boom, there it is. So next step, I'll take it to the hardware studio, get rid of these pour spouts, Now back at the studio, I have a batch of skulls to work on. I begin with my full skulls, and then I continue to the batch of skull bowls, starting by removing the pore spouts. Once removed, I go back in and remove any imperfections and add little details to each one. And now I use a special mixture to paint the bowls, and this makes the details really pop. And these limited edition bowls are on pre-sale right now on my website at catacombculture.com. And if you would like any custom sculptures for yourself or your business, feel free to contact me directly at jeremy@catacombs.us. And we offer wholesale prices as well. I'm also really excited to launch my human skull mugs. Holds about 16 fluid ounces. As we see, there's two color variations I have right now. One being the grayish antique bone, and the other being a warm, fresh from the grave color. And I have two sculptural variations, one with a lower jaw, mandible, and one without. And I have some ready to ship at catacombculture.com. Next is my experimental short art house video titled The Year of Night. After the video, I have a little artist insight and explanation of the film. And you can rewatch this video at catacombculture.com. Now, my short film, The Year of Night, pretty much metaphorically represents the first year I started Catacomb culture. It started cold and alone, in a place where I couldn't see the road ahead, where any dead-end project was a setback, like I was being trapped in a forest brush. As in digging a hole, you should use a pickaxe, not a scythe. So finding the right tools was painful in the early days. And then finding the will to persevere, I had to find it and wear it like a mask. While continuing to grow and establish a home base like an altar to maintain vision of a desired future and openness to possibilities. And also in this video I show small glimpses of my other brand, Death Science, where we do forensic education content. So if you like true crime, CSI, forensic kind of stuff, you can learn more at deathscience.org. Welcome to the Death Science Podcast, where we explore new perspectives on life, death, dying, and the dead. In the Death Science Podcast, I interview death industry insiders, ranging so many professions. For example, episode 13, I interview a forensic anthropologist professor, and we talk about all kinds of things ranging from the CSI effect to entering forensic anthropology as a profession and the various other career paths. In episode 1, I interview a mental health counselor and get his perspective on any kind of correlations between depression and death anxiety. In another episode, I interview a child's grief camp counselor and get her perspective on how children cope and deal with grief. On episode 6, I interview a Buddhist nun who takes us through understanding the Buddhist death rituals, as well as how Buddhists interpret death in the afterlife. On episode 11, I interview a ghost hunter, and she takes us through all the different types of paranormal activity and hauntings, many of which she experienced firsthand. I also interview many different natural burial advocates, spanning from the United States to the UK. In episode 7, I interview a captain who does sea burials. This is a burial of a deceased individual, either a full body or cremated remains scattered at sea. And we also discover that the Coast Guard has made it very difficult to perform a, quote, Viking burial. You know, the burial with a flaming arrow archer. That's actually made up by Hollywood. The Vikings never actually did that. I also interview a historian from the UK who tells us how Stonehenge was made by the pagans, as well as authors who have an intimate relationship with death. We'll meet an Oddities event organizer. We talk to a doctor who's written many articles on near-death experiences. I also interview a death doula who inspires us to be more compassionate for those who are grieving. I interview a musician turned oddities entrepreneur. You can find the Death Science Podcast on any major podcast platform by searching for it by name, the Death Science Podcast, or you can find it on our website at www.deathscience.org/podcast. If you or anyone you know have a unique perspective on life, death, dying, or the dead and would like to be a guest on the show, please email jeremy@catacombs.us to apply. Let's talk about why dead things smell.
And Death Science continues beyond just the podcast. We work with industry professionals, real equipment, as well as props, actors, set designing, and special effects makeup. We create educational simulations, meaning the bodies aren't real dead bodies. But all the education and information we discuss is fact-based and real. So if you're interested in pretty much anything true crime, forensics, crime scene investigation, criminal psychology, mortuary science, alternative burial, or really anything having to do with death, dying, or the dead, You can learn more at deathscience.org. There we have our blog, our podcast, our merch shop, our e-courses, and ebooks. We're most active on TikTok, where you can follow us at Death Science. We're also on YouTube with our longer form content at www.deathscience.tv. And you can support us directly and join our VIP community on Patreon. Subscribe at www.deathscience.vip.
Alright, so we're just wrapping up at the morgue here today, a morgue shoot. And again, if you like all things death science, you could find an e-course that you'd love to learn something about at deathscience.org/learn. Alright, hit the lights. And again, there we have all kinds of courses from forensic anthropology to forensic pathology and death investigation. So enroll today. It's kind of creepy in here. Thank you for spending some of your life's time checking out my art. As a solo artist, merely your interest in my art means a tremendous amount. You can find my whole bone gallery at catacombculture.com. And again, you could email me directly with any kinds of questions, collaborations, custom ideas at jeremy@catacombs.us. Thanks for watching, and I hope to sculpt for you soon.